potential ways into family-centred community-led development, for example, through a school, an environmental restoration project, a community centre or a social service agency. Our advice is just get started. Start from where you are and learn by doing together with others. This work is really rewarding, but it's also time-consuming and challenges our business as usual. While there are no rule books, there's lots we can learn from those already working in family-centred community-led development. Along with the 6 principles outlined in Module 1, at the heart, here are some emerging strategies for success as shared at the Victory Village Forum. Build from the ground up. Build from assets and strengths. Enter from multiple doorways. Be intentional. Be prepared to change. Foster partnerships. Identify and grow local leadership.
Bernardo's were wondering what they were going to do with this very unique building that used to be a convent, and they approached the community by door knocking and with surveys asking what sort of services do you want Bernardo's to provide in this community, and the sort of resounding response from the 1,200 or so people that they talked to was that we don't want services. We don't need more services. One of the other things that came out very strongly was that people wanted to be connected in their community. A lot of people didn't know who their neighbours were, and a lot of the initiatives that people have suggested have come out of those needs.
Our specific stuff was probably about 2.5 years ago when one of the school principals, they were working with Otago Youth Wellness, which is a key sort of support service in our community. And they have the truancy service, and they were looking at the figures in terms of what was happening at the primary school. And they thought it was sort of interesting, so they checked it out and found out that the truancy level wasn't to do with behaviour, it was actually to do with ill health. A lot of it was to do with really poor housing stock and asthma and people being up with sick children, and so children not arriving at school. So it uncovered a whole different layer from what it looked like on the surface, and so that led us into spending 6 months literally beating the feet, going out in the community, meeting people, talking to them, finding out what they wanted.
We have been out in the last year and surveyed 750 members of our iwi living in Opotiki, and asked them a lot of different questions about their well-being, why they live there when so many of us have left because there are not that many employment or educational choices locally. So we wanted to know why they'd stayed, what they love about the place and what their greatest concerns are. Having gone out and spoken to whānau about what they see the concerns being, we also asked them what they thought the solutions might be.
And one of the great beauties of this model is that it's strengths-based. So it works with what works well in the current community, the current community, that local place, rather than focusing on what's the problem to fix. It's not an outside-in approach, it's an inside-out. It's a bottom-up, and that's its beauty.
Nau te raurau, nāku te raurau kaora te iwi. With your food basket and my food basket, the people will be cared for is a huge fundamental thing that we believe in, that everybody that walks in has something to offer and contribute. So you're not coming in here to get, you're coming in here sometimes to give. The reciprocity thing is, I suppose, a real mainstay of community-led development, you know, that everybody has something to contribute and we must make a place for that.
Fantastic public health nurse, amazing. RTLB, special learning support teachers, amazing people who come and volunteers. Even got a little group of old ladies in the community who every year donate some money to the children so somebody can go on camp or get their school uniform. I think one of the jobs that I need to do better is getting that out letting people know actually what's happening, because we know what's happening inside the school, fantastic teachers, but the message doesn't always get out to the parents. So we've got a social worker in our school, and some of the parents know how to access her. We know where she is, but I don't know that all the parents do.
Neighbours Day Aotearoa is a national campaign. It's held at the end of March in every year, so it's an annual celebration of neighbourliness. So it's a way that we can encourage us all to get involved more with our neighbours and to make a start somewhere. And it's a great way for families living in a neighbourhood to connect. It gives them something to work towards, a date, and that we know that the benefits of connecting on one day of the year will flow on throughout the whole year. So Neighbours Day is a vehicle that we can all use to help encourage families to get to know other families in a locality. Some people get together for a street barbecue, others have a joint sports game with the street in a local park, others have baking competitions with kids. There are a whole raft of ways.
An important part of our community is history and its future. A lot of our local area was market gardens and it was very fertile, so there's a lot of people in that area who are actually really excellent when it comes to growing things. And so we've got some space, and there's been times in the past of our school where every final year student had a little plot of land and no one left the school without learning to garden. So we want to tap into that history, and with the inspiration of something like Victory, at some point when the right people come along at the right time, we'd love to see something similar happen. Hey?
You might just be coming in for a cup of tea, you might be coming in to do some gardening, you might be coming in because you've just been beaten the hell up and you need some help. So the range is huge. But when you don't have too many rules and regulations and processes to let people come in the door, then you're going to be able to have a range of people coming in the door.
Stone Soup began in September 2007. It was birthed out of a crisis that we had in Wanganui, and it's been running for almost 4 years now. And so every 8 weeks we do a community gathering where we gather at Lawrencedale Park in Gonville, and we will range maybe 180 to 400 people depending on the day. Every great gathering has good food, so we have hangi, and sometimes we do a barbecue. That probably does bring a few people, but a lot of people come because there's people there that they can talk to, and if you live alone, you know, they come and they just have a cry and they have conversation. And as Judy will say, you know, a great community does eat and talks together, grows together.
That volleyball competition, so February 22nd, the children were lying flat on their faces on this front field, you know, as the big rumblings coming through. And then about a month or two later, initiated from a local parent who had connections with volleyball, there they were, there was these hundreds of kids all in their colours, there was 20 or so volleyball courts, they were all learning how to play, the balls everywhere, and it was music, and there was fun and laughter and dancing between, and it was just a moment, you know. And I thought that here we are, the schools are working together, not against each other. The children have bounced back from flat on the deck, and there they are. This is full of joy and music and laughter. And you could look at other principals from other schools and look at each other and know that they're feeling the same feeling as you are right at that moment. So I think that was a wee aha moment. I think in terms of where we want to be, not just in our local community, but the very surrounding schools that we want to work together with, more than just compete with.
Often it's like the community centre's the hub, or the marae that's the hub, or it might start as an arts centre that can look different in different places. What I love about this model where the school is the hub is that it really does make the family-centred stuff work. You know, because where do most families go every day?
And we use the community-led research using a participatory research approach, also grassroots, people from the community actually asking the questions of their community members. So we tweaked that to become the information collection for this master plan urban design. And so we ended up getting community members sitting on the steering group. They were paid, as well as the other professionals who were there. We had iwi involvement right at the beginning. We had huge amounts of on-the-ground research done. I mean, we're talking about maps at the community shops. We're talking door knocking, cups of tea conversations, community events. the whole works, we would have touched hundreds of people in that community, hundreds of families in that community.
One of the methods that we've accessed our community through is through the computers in homes. So the board were talking about it, the parents talking about it, the teachers are talking about it, the kids are talking about it. The wider community is saying, why can't we be part of it?
It's the friend of a friend of a friend that's talking about it.
And as a result of that, Aero is talking about it being a successful way to engage with our family.
The difference in thinking that the family-centred approach brought really made a difference in terms of understanding the vision that people had, and changed the questions that we were asking as well. It wasn't about questions of what do you want to see in the next 10 years. It's about what do you want to see that would support your family in the next 10 years. We're getting different answers that we're getting from that question. And it's amazing that you lose that self-interest when you ask people about their families, because it's not just about them, it's about their kids, it's about their parents or their neighbours down the road. It's whatever supports their well-being.
So if we're talking about whānau-centred ways of working, whānau being at the middle, I'd like to think that we ask ourselves a few questions. Who's going to be in the room when we're having that kōrero? Are whānau in the room when we're having that kōrero? Who's actually going to be visible and who's talking in the room? I think that's a really important question to ask ourselves if we're thinking about being whānau-centred, and who's controlling the discourse, who's naming things, who's defining what's real for whānau in this community.
Great Start is about empowering people in the community. In lower socioeconomic communities, you quite often get people coming along and doing programs to you. Great Start is not about that. We're about saying, you're a member of the community. What do you think this community needs? What do you want to offer your community? And how can we support you with what you want to do?
Because what we're trying to do is put in place a process where the community leads, not the funder. Because if the funder leads and comes up with the ideas, it won't work. The funder's got to support the community's leadership.
We were able to narrow those down to a cluster of consistent solutions, and now we need to come together as a community to action those, and we realise we won't be able to do it on our own. As one organisation, we're going to need to work with a lot of other organisations and bring them all to the table.
I think it's really important that we continue to notice, to collect and to gather evidence of change, to be able to demonstrate that change that has occurred. And we know that change in communities takes a long time to happen, so really noticing what is happening along the way. And some of the time we need to work with other people who will prompt us to notice the change and say to us, have you recorded that? Have you written that somewhere? Have you kept something of that? Have you taken a photo or have you done something?
The challenges to put this into implementation stage is being able to change the mindset of whānau who have always had things done to them, to change the mindset of providers to do things differently and not determine what needs to be done to people, and to change government agencies on the way they fund initiatives. Instead of being very constrictive and restrictive, they need to be more flexible to actually get the outcomes that we're looking for.
You know, just come and ask what's needed in this community, and for a lot of them I think it's a real mind bend that actually they may need to come and ask what it is we need in communities, and then be prepared to trust us with the resources that they give us to make the decisions about how they should be invested.
But our approach is fairly straightforward really. We are looking to focus on an individual neighbourhood or suburb or town rather than a single project or issue within that neighbourhood. Looking to the community to identify the strengths and the assets within that community, as well as the issues and the challenges. Look to support a process that involves all sectors of the community in identifying what the issues are and what the challenges are. And some disadvantages for a philanthropist taking this approach. Firstly, some disadvantages or challenges. Funder has to be prepared to let go and recognise that actually we don't know everything. The community does. The power imbalance, we need to be very conscious of the power imbalance that does exist, whether we like it or not, between funders and fundees, and we as funders need to work really hard to level that out. And the best quote I've heard that describes to me what a funder's role can be is untying the knots and connecting the dots.
Cure is a problem-based approach. When there's an identified problem, the carer goes in to fix, prescribe, remove the offender, implement an intervention plan and counsel. And when the problem is fixed, the connection is finished and the case is discharged. Care is a relationship-based approach, a journey of relationship building and being present in a person's life through various challenges and achievements. In your community, what does each of these look like? How can we strengthen care? And if you have a curer's role, how can you take more of a carer's approach to your work?
People are always coming up with new ways of doing things and new things that are the latest thing and the most wonderful thing. And I think sometimes we have to stop and think, this is truly wonderful, but who else is doing it, or who else is doing something similar to it that we could integrate this with?
And I think from where schools stand, there's no point in saying that it's not the school's issue. What we want is happy and safe families, and I want my bubs coming to school in a position where they can maximise their learning. So much more learning goes on outside the school grounds, and we might as well think of it and use it as a really, really big learning environment.
Ours is a real mixture. I mean, and that's what we like about it, is actually doing that community thing. Like, it's actually making it happen. Ours is a mixture of the schools. But a lot of community members. It's actually very community driven. So it's actually it's led by people who live in the community. But the schools, there's a lot of agencies. We've got the churches involved. The Salvation Army take a key role. Yeah, and we've sort of been able to develop within the valley. So, and then negotiate for help and resources from outside.
It's that whole concept of aku aku. We learn and we share from each other. And when you have lots of people with energy that are innovators, that are change agents, we learn from each other. And we're not experts in our own right. We're getting a whole range of ideas. And that learning from each other is a very powerful New Zealand way.
And so when we went to the council, you know, with the idea of the park, the children were there with their pictures, with their ideas, and the council loved it. They loved the fact that the community were coming into council, and it was the real community. This was children and, you know, their parents. There was a mix of colour. There was a mix of, and the children asked that they be a part of building the park in Taira, and the council loved that. And that same day we got a ring back from council saying, yep, let's do it together.
I think we also need to understand the inherent nature of government, of community, of iwi and of whānau, and not spend all our time trying to make government into community and community to behave like government, and whānau to be families, as if that's interchangeable, because it's not necessarily so. So we need to really think about what that organisation might mean. And we need to think about whether we're going to be spending our time then doing things differently, which can take an awful lot of energy, or whether we're actually being invited and inviting ourselves to do some different things. And I think both are going to be important.
Margaret Wheatley wrote, A leader is anyone willing to help, anyone who sees something that needs to change and takes the first steps to influence that situation. The leaders and change makers in your community may not be the traditional leaders. Perhaps step back and take another look at who your true emerging leaders are.
I think there are different kinds of leaders, and I think it's being able to see and value the different sorts of leadership that comes into places. So some people are what I would call, and this is not at all scientific, your speaking leaders, and there'll be your very visible ones who might be up the front talking up a particular issue, and you want as many of those from different places as you can.
Best thing that's come out of that and out of the program is that we've got parents who began in the program as not a lot of knowledge around computers, who are now confident enough to take on the next computers in homes programs.
If they were to if we were to do that, they've offered to train to take on
to
that
train
training.
the next load of participants.
We have a breakfast club at school, and we had a vacancy on that breakfast club, and I had this conversation with a friend of mine where I said, we're all the nanas. There's got to be lots of nanas and granddads out there in the community. And this friend of mine went and found a nana and shoulder tapped her. And often people, in my experience, don't step forward when you advertise or you put the sweep out really broadly. You've got to be really specific about shoulder tapping to get people involved, and it's a much more effective way of getting help.
And if we have a sense of belonging, then we have a sense of ownership, and it helps us step up more and more to become leaders, not in a big sense. It's like you can be a situational leader, you know, in the moment. It's like, oh, let's go off and do this, or, you know, all of us can be leaderful in our own ways. And so it's calling people, I think, to live out the best of themselves in their families, in their communities, whatever part they play.